This is John's Evo 5. We're turning it from a quick street car into a competitive race car. It's already got a stroker and a sequential box in it, or dog box. It's got a dog box in it. We're doing a cage. See, we already pulled the rear window. We're going to be doing door trims, firewall. Car's already been stripped out, ready to work on. Front lateral bars in the Evo, pretty tricky bar because we've got pretty much a set point where the bottom's got to go and a set point where the top's got to go, right up in that corner up there. And we've got to make it fit the roof and the windscreen like a glove. Most motorsport rules do not allow a backwards bend here. It's got to be straight from this point all the way up to here. We need a nice clean area down the bottom. I've got roughly where it needs to go here, so I'm just going to clean that up right now. Front foot placement. Just sort of working out where's going to be the best. Away from the pedal a bit, because your little foot's going to be here. So I think we're pretty good there. We've cleared all the sound deadening. Done the same on the other side. Let's drill the floor. Put these in somewhere there like that. Got a full mock-up. We're fitting up these billet racecraft connectors because they're the cleanest looking connector. They've got actual FIA certification on them. We can use these up to the highest level roll cage. They're a lot stiffer than the sleeve type connectors and now the old scaffold type connectors that are banned. And they're just hella pretty. They just look so much better once they're painted and welded and the bolts are in. It just looks like a bit of roll cage tube. They're far stiffer than the actual tube itself, so we always see on the internet, bolt-in roll cages aren't as stiff as welding cages. I think the only reason for that is because they don't have the same level of gusseting to the body. The actual cage itself, just as stiff. It's the same design, the same level of stiffness, it's just not true. So you can see we've fitted them up now pre-welding. We've got to make sure the orientation's correct. Everything has to be square, level, perfect for them to work. If it's not, we'll just have a hell of a time getting it apart. A lot of making the roll cage look neat is making it consistent and symmetrical. I'm going to show you how I mark gussets, and once you see this, I don't think you'll ever do it differently. This is a gusset that we use on door bars a lot. We have these laser cut, so the holes are always in exactly the same place. Saves a lot of time. If we want to make a shorter one, we can just chop it down. I very rarely weld the whole thing, because if you do that, you've got here a half a metre of weld that has to be perfect. Because if it's not perfect, it just looks messy. So what we often do is weld on and off very roughly 50-50, but getting the spacings is a big part of making it look neat and perfect. So I'm going to show you how I do that. So the easiest way here, you really only need 2 tools for it. Set square, just has to be square, nothing special. Texture, make sure it's sharp, got to be sharp. How do we work out the spacings when we're welding on, when we're welding off? The easiest way is just to let the holes do it for you. Okay, so we've got here 7 holes. There's no maths required. This is really, really simple. I'm just lining up the square with the edge of the holes and marking along. These don't have to be perfect because you're going to be welding up to these lines, starting from these lines. It's going to be difficult to see through the helmet. There's any number of factors, so your welds aren't going to be perfectly started and perfectly stopped. But if the proportions are roughly correct, it will look correct. So I have all these marks indicating the edge of the circles. My dimple dies. I'm actually only marking the areas we're not welding. So when it comes down to it, there's no guessing. That's that. So I'm going to go through and tack every dot, both sides, and make sure that the panel is fitted to the tube correctly. It's got to be uniform or else it's not going to weld up right. It'll have lumps, it'll be hard to weld. Fitment and prep is almost everything here. It's got to be really good. So all this is fully tacked now. Not only does the tack hold the gusset onto the bar work, it also serves as the start and finish point for all the welds. So it's much easier to see through the lens of tack weld than it is the lines. Got some of the cage right there ready to go into the car. I'm working on a rear firewall. So this is MDF. You can see the fitment's rough as at the moment, and it's kind of how it's supposed to be right now, because I'm going to transfer that into aluminium because we're doing the door cards and the parcel shelf and the rear seat area all in aluminium to box off the fuel system from the rest of the car. This is important in a fire. So no fuel or anything leaks into the cabin after an accident. So we've got to add a bit of material around here. We've got to add a little bitty here, take a bit out there, add a bit there. Sometimes I do 3 or 4 of these before I actually transfer it to aluminium, just to make sure that the fitment is as good as it can be. The same template from the car, aluminium 1.6mm aluminium sheet. We're going to transfer the template onto the sheet. It's blue at the moment because it has a protective plastic film over it to stop it getting scratched. So we're going to draw straight onto the film, add the pieces we need to add, take away where we need to take away, and see how we go. So now I'm going to go through and drill and hole saw the radiuses, then cut the lot out with a jigsaw, clean it up with the grinder, and we'll see what it looks like in the car. It's pretty good in most areas. A little bit more off around the corner down there where those cables come through. Otherwise we're good. So we're going to take it out and clean up the bits that missed, start putting in my nutserts so I can mark the holes. So we've opted for only 2 nutserts on this one. Reason being is the top panel laps over the bottom one and it's going to hold it nice and square and firm against the back. And it looks like there's 2 M8s we can pick up down here that'll be in a good spot. So I think between those 4 and the way the panel's going to bend over the middle, once it's Sikaflexed on, I think it'll be pretty sturdy. And the other thing is, using nutserts, you got to be so careful. They never turn out exactly bang on where they're supposed to. They're easy to strip out, so I take nutserts very seriously and just really only use the bare minimum I need to get through a job. So we're going to lay the panel up now and mark the nutserts and the M8s from behind, and then we can drill it out and work on the pattern that we're going to bead roll into the top of the panel. We're going to bead roll this panel. I think the key to making a bead roll panel look natural is picking radiuses and lines that look natural to the car and not overdoing it, and trying to keep to a theme throughout the car so the panels look like they tie into each other. The parcel shelf here that we've already rolled, it's a bit hard to see with the plastic on, but we've sort of drilled the holes first and then worked the pattern in with the holes rather than with the outside of the car. So we're going to try and do the same here, make sure the rolls don't interfere with the holes. So I've drawn a pattern that looks very roughly similar to my first one, so they should complement each other, saying they're going to be right next to each other. Next up, we'll get rid of all the lines we're not using, roll the bead into it. Final mock-up before we drop it to paint, ironing out any fitment issues so we don't have to f around with a painted panel. I think I'm pretty happy. John will be pretty happy. It all sort of ties in together pretty nicely. My favourite day, install day. We know everything fits. We've just got it back from the painter. Ground the logo back. Put fresh bolts in. It's a VW colour of some sort. It's supposed to tie in with the red splashes on the car. All the panel work's been painted. Looks pretty fresh. That's supposed to be body matched. So we're going to do all the install today in the Evo. Still got the rear window out. She's pretty stripped. Dash is still out. Looking pretty raw. What we did in the end, I've remounted the splitter. I welded a bunch of supports to this cross member to get a bit more strength out of it because he's ripped it off a few times. Yeah, it's not too bad now. Heaps stronger, a little more permanent. We did sheet metal guards inside there as well. Bit of a shame, they were cool. Deleted his rear wiper. We've done a sheet metal parcel shop. It's fully bead rolled. We have stamped it with our lightning bolt. You can see we did firewall into the back there as well, all bolted up. Rear door cards. And so you can still open it. It's on central locking, so no need to worry about anything else. And a roll cage. It's a 6-point. Okay, so the door bars disappear into the dash there. Looks a bit like a welding cage. Fitment's pretty bananas on this one. Some of my better work. Gussets in the centre, harness guides with our logo in them. So Ministry is a safety specialist. We do predominantly roll cages, but there's other little bits and pieces that go along with that. In this car, there's a big fuel system in the boot, so we're fully blocked off the boot. So if there's an accident or a fuel leak or something like that, that bit of sheet metal is supposed to keep the fire out of the car. Full bolting cage. You can see up there billet racecraft connectors. This is how it should be done. That fitment down the pillar. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this one's turned out. Pressed up against the inner door skin like that. This cage is what we call a state level cage. It's compliant up to a state level of competition according to Motorsports Australia. But the good thing about Motorsports Australia is that their regulations are often in line with FIA. So there is some levels that this will comply with overseas as well. Got a look here at the mounting plates. So that plate will have an identical version underneath the car that we Sikaflex to the car, and I usually seal it with body deadener too so we can't get any water through. Try and help protect the car from rust a bit. 4-bolt mounts in each corner to Motorsport Australia specifications. And 3-bolt smaller ones in the back. We use M8s and 3mm plate because it's a bit more malleable to suit the car. How good are these connectors? Yeah, this would be a wrap on the Evo. Oh yeah, daddy.